The smell of roasted turkey and Mom's famous green bean casserole filled the dining room, but the warmth I'd always associated with Thanksgiving felt conspicuously absent. I sat at the far end of the long mahogany table in my childhood home, watching my family celebrate another year of blessings while treating me like an unwelcome guest who'd somehow infiltrated their gathering. My stepmother Linda was holding court at one end, describing her latest charity luncheon to my half-sisters Rebecca and Amanda. My father, Dr. Richard Morrison, sat at the head of the table in his customary position of authority, occasionally nodding at Linda's stories while reviewing something on his phone, probably hospital business even on Thanksgiving. I'd been back from my deployment for 6 months, but the distance between me and my family felt wider than the ocean I'd crossed returning from overseas. Every conversation seemed to skirt around my presence. Every family anecdote carefully excluded any reference to me, and every shared memory stopped conveniently at the point where I'd joined the military 8 years ago. "Rebecca, tell everyone about the promotion," Linda prompted, beaming with maternal pride. My 26-year-old half-sister launched into a detailed account of her advancement to senior marketing coordinator at the local tourism bureau, complete with salary details and future prospects. Everyone listened with rapt attention, asking follow-up questions and offering congratulations. "And Amanda's engagement party planning is going so well," Linda continued seamlessly. "The venue deposit alone was $12,000, but Richard insisted on only the best for his daughter." I took a sip of wine and continued eating, long accustomed to being the invisible family member. 8 years in the Army, including 3 deployments, and my family still introduced me to their friends as Richard's daughter from his first marriage, with the kind of apologetic tone usually reserved for embarrassing relatives. What they didn't know, what none of them had ever bothered to ask about, was what I'd actually been doing during those 8 years of military service they seemed so eager to avoid discussing. They assumed I was just another enlisted soldier, probably struggling financially, definitely unable to contribute meaningfully to conversations about career advancement and financial success. They treated my service like an extended rebellious phase that I'd hopefully grow out of soon. In reality, I was Lieutenant Colonel Jessica Morrison, one of the youngest field-grade officers in military intelligence, with a security clearance that had allowed me to work on operations that would remain classified for the next 50 years. My military career had been exceptional by any measure, but more importantly, it had connected me with people and opportunities that had nothing to do with the Army. During my second deployment, I'd developed a friendship with Dr. Marcus Webb, a civilian contractor who'd been working on battlefield medical innovations. When he'd returned to the States and founded Webb Medical Technologies, he'd asked me to join his advisory board. That initial consulting role had led to investments, partnerships, and eventually to my current position as the silent majority shareholder in what had become a billion-dollar medical device company. My family had no idea that the little side projects I'd mentioned working on during leave periods were actually patent applications for revolutionary trauma care equipment. They didn't know that my modest apartment near the base was modest by choice, not necessity. They didn't know that I could have bought their house 3 times over without affecting my investment portfolio. Most importantly, they didn't know that I'd been the anonymous benefactor behind numerous charitable initiatives that had directly benefited my father's hospital and, by extension, his career. "Dad's been so busy with the new cardiac wing," Rebecca was saying. "The dedication ceremony is next month, and everyone's calling it the crowning achievement of his career." Dr. Morrison smiled with the kind of professional pride that had defined my childhood. $25 million in private donations. "I never thought we'd reach that goal, but sometimes the universe provides exactly what you need when you need it." I almost choked on my wine. The universe, that had provided exactly what he needed, was sitting 6 feet away from him, invisible as always. The anonymous donation that had made the cardiac wing possible, $15 million that had appeared through a complex charitable foundation structure, had come from my personal accounts. The additional $10 million in matching funds that had mysteriously materialized when the project faced cost overruns had also been mine. For 2 years, I'd watched my father bask in the glory of securing the largest private donation in the hospital's history, accepting accolades for his fundraising abilities and vision for the future of cardiac care. The local newspaper had run a profile calling him the miracle worker who made the impossible possible. The hospital board had given him a substantial bonus for his exceptional development work. All of it built on money I'd provided anonymously because I'd wanted to see him succeed, because I'd been proud of his medical career, because I'd thought that maybe, if the project was successful enough, he'd find a way to include me in his pride. Instead, I'd watched him accept credit for my generosity while continuing to treat me like a disappointing afterthought at family gatherings. The dedication ceremony is going to be beautiful, Linda added. Richard's been asked to give the keynote address about the importance of community support and private philanthropy. It's really about vision, my father said, warming to his favorite topic. Understanding that sometimes you have to think bigger than traditional funding sources. Sometimes you have to trust that if you build something worthy, the resources will find their way to you. The irony was so thick I could have performed surgery on it. Amanda, my 23-year-old half-sister, looked down the table at me with the kind of polite curiosity usually reserved for distant acquaintances. Jessica, how's your military thing going? Are you still doing that? Before I could answer, Linda jumped in with her characteristic tact. I'm sure Jessica has her own plans for the future. Not everyone is cut out for traditional success. The silence that followed was filled with the kind of awkward energy that suggested everyone was thinking the same thing but was too polite to say it out loud. That's when my father stood up, his wine glass in hand, and delivered the coup de grace. You know what? He said, his voice carrying the authority that had made him such an effective hospital administrator. I think it's time we addressed something that's been bothering me. The table went quiet, everyone sensing that something significant was about to happen. Jessica, I appreciate that you've made time to join us today, but I have to be honest. This is family time. This is a table for people who've built something meaningful with their lives, people who contribute to society in substantial ways. I felt my chest tighten, but I kept my expression neutral. I think it would be better for everyone if you found somewhere else to spend your holidays. Somewhere more appropriate to your current circumstances. The words hit like a physical blow. Around the table, I saw Rebecca looking uncomfortable, Amanda staring at her plate, and Linda nodding with approval. You don't belong at this table, he concluded, sitting back down with the satisfied air of someone who'd finally said what needed to be said. Family only. For a moment I sat frozen, processing what had just happened. My own father had just disinvited me from Thanksgiving dinner because he didn't consider my military service worthy of respect. Because he thought I hadn't contributed enough to society to deserve a seat at his table. The table that was celebrating achievements made possible by my anonymous financial support. I stood up slowly, gathered my coat from the back of my chair, and smiled. You're absolutely right, Dad. Family only. I walked toward the front door, pulling out my phone as I went. Behind me, I could hear confused murmurs, someone asking if they should say something, Linda quietly reassuring everyone that this was for the best. I stepped outside into the crisp November air and made the call that would change everything. Sarah? It's Jessica. I need you to cancel something for me. Sarah Martinez had been my assistant for 3 years, managing the complex web of investments, charitable donations, and business interests that comprised my civilian life. She was brilliant, discreet, and completely unflappable, which made her perfect for handling the kind of call I was about to make. Of course, what needs to be cancelled? The Morrison Medical Center donation. All of it. The cardiac wing funding, the equipment grants, the research endowments. Everything connected to that hospital needs to be terminated immediately. There was a brief pause. Jessica, that's approximately $37 million in committed funding across multiple programs. The cardiac wing dedication is next month. I'm aware. May I ask what prompted this decision? Let's just say I've decided to redirect my charitable giving toward organizations that actually value the people who support them. Understood. I'll need about an hour to contact all the relevant foundations and legal representatives. The hospital's development office will likely receive notifications beginning around 6 o'clock. Perfect. And Sarah? Make sure they understand that this isn't a temporary suspension. This is a permanent withdrawal of all current and future support. I'll make that very clear. I ended the call and sat in my car for a moment, watching through the dining room window as my family continued their Thanksgiving celebration. They looked happy, relaxed, blissfully unaware that their patriarch's greatest professional triumph was about to evaporate in the next 60 minutes. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. First round of cancellations complete. Hospital Development Office has been notified. Board of Directors will be contacted within the hour. I drove home to my modest apartment, ordered Chinese takeout and settled in to watch football. At exactly 5:47 p.m., my phone started ringing. The first call was from Dr. Patricia Holmes, the hospital's chief development officer. Colonel Morrison? I'm calling about what appears to be a misunderstanding regarding the Morrison Medical Center charitable commitments. I let it go to voicemail. The second call at 6:23 p.m. was from James Crawford, chairman of the hospital's board of directors. Jessica, this is Jim Crawford. There seems to be some confusion about funding commitments, and I'd really appreciate a chance to speak with you directly. Voicemail. The third call at 6:41 p.m. was from my father. Jessica, what the hell is going on? I've got people calling me about donations and funding and your name keeps coming up. Call me back immediately. I answered that one. Hi, Dad. What is this about donations? Why are people calling me about you and the hospital? Oh, that. I decided to redirect my charitable giving toward organizations that actually value the people who support them. Your charitable giving? Jessica, what are you talking about? The cardiac wing, Dad. The anonymous donation that made it possible? The matching funds that covered the cost overruns? The equipment grants, the research endowments, the entire foundation of your greatest professional achievement? That was all me. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for nearly 30 seconds. That's impossible. Is it? Is it impossible that the daughter you just dismissed as unworthy of your family table might have accomplished something meaningful with her life? Is it impossible that someone you consider unsuccessful might have actually been supporting your success all along? Jessica, I don't understand. Here's what you need to understand, Dad. For 2 years, I've been anonymously funding projects at your hospital because I was proud of your work and wanted to see you succeed. I've watched you take credit for securing donations that came from my personal accounts. I've listened to you give interviews about your fundraising abilities while standing behind money I provided. But how? Where would you get that kind of money? Turns out 8 years of military service, particularly when combined with good investment decisions and successful business partnerships, can be quite lucrative. Who you? I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end of the line. Jessica, listen. If there's been a misunderstanding about tonight. There's been no misunderstanding. You made it very clear that I don't belong at your family table because I haven't contributed enough to society. So I've decided to make sure my future contributions go to people who actually appreciate them. But the cardiac wing, the dedication ceremony is next month. I'm sure you'll figure something out. You're very good at making the impossible possible, remember? I hung up and turned off my phone. The next morning, I woke up to 47 missed calls and 63 text messages. The local newspaper's website had a breaking story. Major funding crisis threatens Morrison Medical Center's new cardiac wing. The article quoted several unnamed hospital sources discussing the sudden and unexpected withdrawal of major private support that was threatening to halt construction just weeks before the scheduled opening. I made coffee, read the news coverage and called Sarah. Good morning, Jessica. I assume you've seen the media coverage. I have. How bad is the hospital's situation? Significant. Without your funding, they're approximately $18 million short of what they need to complete the cardiac wing as planned. The board held an emergency meeting last night. Dr. Morrison has been asked to explain how this happened. And what's he telling them? According to my sources, he's claiming he had no idea the anonymous donor was his daughter, and that the funding withdrawal appears to be related to a personal family matter. Accurate if incomplete. The board is not pleased. They're questioning how he could have accepted such substantial donations without knowing their source, and whether his family relationships might pose ongoing risks to hospital fundraising. I sipped my coffee and considered this. What about alternative funding sources? They're scrambling, but replacing $37 million in committed funding on short notice is challenging. Several board members are suggesting they may need to scale back the project significantly or delay the opening indefinitely. My phone rang. It was my father. Jessica, please. We need to talk. Do we? I made a mistake. I said things I shouldn't have said. But this isn't just about me. There are patients who need this cardiac wing. People who will die without access to this technology. And whose fault is that, Dad? Whine. It's my fault. I was wrong about you, wrong about your contributions, wrong about everything. For the first time since Thanksgiving dinner, he sounded genuinely humble. Jessica, I had no idea about your business success, your financial capabilities, any of it. I've been treating you like a child when you've been supporting my career in ways I never imagined. Why didn't you know, Dad? In 8 years, did you ever once ask about my life outside the military? Did you ever wonder how I could afford to live comfortably on a soldier's salary? Did you ever show any curiosity about what I'd accomplished or what I was working on? No. No, I didn't. You didn't want to know. You wanted to keep seeing me as the disappointing daughter who'd chosen military service over a real career. It was easier than admitting that maybe you'd misjudged me. You're right. And I'm sorry. The apology hung in the air between us. Dad, I don't need your approval anymore. I stopped needing it years ago. But I do need your respect. And I need you to understand that my military service isn't something I'm doing until I figure out my real life. It is my real life. It's meaningful work that I'm proud of. I understand that now. Do you? Because this isn't just about money, Dad. This is about the fact that you dismissed 8 years of service to my country as insufficient contribution to society. This is about you deciding that someone who's served 3 combat deployments doesn't deserve a seat at your family table. Jessica, I was wrong. Completely, utterly wrong. Yes, you were. Is there anything I can do to fix this? Not just the hospital funding but us. Our relationship. I considered his question carefully. Maybe. But it starts with you acknowledging publicly that your daughter is Lieutenant Colonel Jessica Morrison, a decorated military officer who's served her country with distinction. It starts with you being proud of what I've actually accomplished instead of disappointed that I haven't accomplished something else. I can do that. And it means treating me like an adult family member whose choices deserve respect, even if they're not the choices you would have made. Yes. And Dad, if we rebuild this relationship, it's going to be based on honesty. No more anonymous donations, no more allowing you to take credit for my contributions. If I support the hospital in the future, it'll be openly as your daughter, and you'll acknowledge that support appropriately. Of course. I looked out my apartment window at the city where I'd grown up, the city where my father had built his medical career, the city where I'd soon be starting a new chapter of my own. Here's what I'm prepared to offer. I'll restore the cardiac wing funding, but it's going to be public this time. The dedication ceremony will acknowledge Lieutenant Colonel Jessica Morrison as the primary donor. The wing will include a memorial to military medical personnel who've served in combat zones. And you're going to give a speech about the importance of recognizing service in all its forms. Jessica, yes. Absolutely yes. And Dad? Next Thanksgiving, I want to hear you tell the family about your daughter, the decorated Army officer who saved your hospital's cardiac wing. I want to hear you brag about my military achievements the same way you brag about Rebecca's promotion and Amanda's engagement. I will. I promise. One more thing. I want you to personally call every board member who was involved in questioning your competence yesterday and explain that your daughter is not a liability to the hospital's fundraising efforts. She is, in fact, one of the most significant donors in the institution's history. I'll make those calls today. 3 weeks later, I stood in my dress uniform at the dedication ceremony for the Morrison Medical Center Cardiac Wing. The plaque by the entrance read, "Generously funded by Lieutenant Colonel Jessica Morrison, U.S. Army, in honor of military medical personnel who serve our nation at home and abroad." My father's keynote address included a 15-minute section about his daughter's military service, her business acumen, and her commitment to improving cardiac care for veterans and civilians alike. He spoke with genuine pride about my 3 deployments, my decorations, and my post-military career. When he introduced me to give remarks about the importance of military-civilian medical partnerships, the applause was thunderous. After the ceremony at the reception, Linda approached me with an expression I'd never seen before. "Jessica, I owe you an apology. A significant one. Thank you. I had no idea about your accomplishments. Your father never told us about your business success or your rank or any of it. He didn't know. How is that possible? He never asked." She nodded slowly. "That's going to change. Richard talks about you constantly now. He's incredibly proud and, frankly, a little embarrassed about how long it took him to recognize what you'd achieved." At the family dinner that followed, held at an upscale restaurant where I didn't have to worry about being disinvited, Rebecca and Amanda peppered me with questions about military life, business investments, and my plans for the future. They listened with genuine interest as I described combat deployments, patent applications, and the complex world of military contracting. For the first time in years, I felt like a full member of my own family. As we were leaving the restaurant, my father pulled me aside. "Jessica, I want you to know that I've learned something important from all of this." "What's that?" "That success comes in many forms, and just because I don't understand someone's path doesn't mean it's not a worthy path." "That's a good lesson, Dad. I'm proud of you." "I should have said that years ago, but I'm saying it now. I'm proud of your service, proud of your business success, and proud that you used your resources to help save lives through the cardiac wing." "Thank you. And Jessica? You'll always have a seat at our family table. Always." As I drove home that night, I reflected on how a single phone call had transformed not just my father's career prospects, but our entire family dynamic. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not reveal your strength, but withdraw your support until people realize what they've been taking for granted. The cardiac wing opened 2 months later and has since saved hundreds of lives. My father was promoted to Chief Medical Officer. And every Thanksgiving since then has included a toast to our family's hero, Lieutenant Colonel Jessica Morrison. Turns out I did belong at that table after all. I just had to teach them how to see it.